War is man's worst creation. It shows what lengths man will go to become victorious. Even with the atrocities of war, we must learn it so it doesn't repeat itself. The wars of the past showed the risks we're willing to take to win. There's no changing what we've done in the past, but to ponder and create new ways to prevent such tragedies. Throughout wars in history, alliances were formed out of the compromises and agreements of both sides. And the Non-Aggression Pact of 1939 is a prime example of how effective a pact can be. Its compromise led to one of the most shocking and unexpected alliances of World War II, although Operation Barbarossa would abruptly change that and all of World War II for the better. November 11th, 1918. Germany is defeated by the Allied forces in World War I and forced to pay war damages and take blame for the war in its entirety. Germany and its newly formed government, the Weimar Republic, was forced to pay $32 billion in war damages. When adjusted for inflation, that's equivalent to just over $519 billion in today's market. This seriously damaged the economy of post-war Germany and led the country to a depression. It got to the point where a loaf of bread cost more than the average family's entire savings. Walls inside houses were lined with banknotes to act as a substitute for wallpaper. Wheelbarrows full of money were being pushed around in markets. With the United States giving Germany loans to pay off their war debts, it helped for a while until the stock market crash of 1929. In 1933, German President Paul Hindenburg named Hitler Chancellor of Germany due to the state of the economy. Hitler was determined to create Lebensraum, living space for Germany, as stated in his autobiography Mein Kampf, which he penned in prison while serving time for a failed coup. He'd kick off World War II by invading Poland on September 1st, 1939. Hitler knew Germany had effectively lost World War I due to the separation of her troops. Having to fight on both eastern and western fronts caused the German troops to be separated, which would affect their fighting strength altogether. Hitler strategized that if they only had to focus on one front, they could put all their manpower and resources towards that front and not have to worry about the rear. So before starting the most deadliest conflict in all of human history, he'd make an unlikely alliance which would shock the whole world. August 23rd, 1939. Germany and the USSR gave the world a serious wake-up call. German Foreign Minister Joachim Ribbentrop and USSR Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov met in Moscow along with Stalin himself. By the end of the day, they would sign and agree on a non-aggression pact. Hitler writes in a letter to Mussolini, dictator of Italy, Duce, that through negotiations with Soviet Russia, a completely new situation in world politics has been produced, which must be regarded as the most greatest possible gain for the Axis. However, the pact could have been avoided altogether months prior. The Soviets' Commissioner of Foreign Affairs, Maxim Litvinov, and Stalin proposed an alliance with Britain, France, and Russia to protect the European countries against any aggression. But Neville Chamberlain, the current Prime Minister of Britain, expressed his distrust in Stalin in the House of Commons. Proposal talks weren't given a second thought and were quickly forgotten. In this instance, however, the conflict arose after the compromise. Everyone knew Germany saw most nations, including the USSR, as enemies of the state, which is why Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, seemed to appear inevitable and was expected. On June 22, 1941, the operation to invade the Soviet Union commenced and was successful in its first few months, taking multiple cities, causing devastating results in effect. It was the largest invasion force in all of human history, consisting of 3 million soldiers, 3,000 tanks, 7,000 artillery, and 2,500 aircraft. Helmut Waltz, a German soldier, writes,
We were confident we would win. Every day we had successes. Every day we advanced and advanced. We always had advanced. We never retreated. Never. We did have this feeling of superiority.
The plan was to take the USSR by winter. So with all the firepower and pure might, why did it fail? How did Russian forces, who were unorganized and poorly trained, manage to defeat the Germans? After successfully breaking the Soviet fronts, Hitler looked for a way to cause economic mayhem for the Soviet high command, focusing on industrial cities and vital oil fields to dampen the Soviets' ability to regroup. Taking the industrial city of Kharkov, the military center of Leningrad, and more. Lumida Anapolva, a survivor of the siege of Leningrad, recalls,
"The whole world was at war. One summer's day, the black, bent receiver of our street radio announced that the war had spilled over our borders. The city was surrounded. The evacuation had been cancelled. The siege had begun."
They were roughly 230 miles outside Moscow before the brutal Russian winter set in. The winter of 1941 is known as one of the most coldest winters of the 20th century. This time was essential for the Soviets since heavy rainfall made roads muddy and almost impossible to pass. The Germans, who were ill-equipped to handle winter combat, soon found soldiers dying of frostbite and with machinery and weapons freezing over and not being able to be used to fight off the Russian opposition. The Russians soon went back on the offensive, taking back city after city, day after day, reclaiming the land the Germans took from them. By December 5th, 1941, the Nazi forces had been pushed back. Fresh Russian troops were being sent by the millions to fight the Nazis. Sometimes compromises don't always lead to a peaceful outcome. We can form alliances and allies that can very well shake the foundation of the world powers. They can be disastrous in effect and destroy the people's well-beings and livelihoods. In this situation, the Germans' own ideology led to their own demise. They reached a compromise with Russia that took the whole world by surprise. They had the complete potential to conquer all of Europe and win the war. Yet their own confidence and strut led them to a harsh reality and outcome they weren't expecting. To their own dismay and relief to the world, the invasion would be deemed a failure, and was the first step to the Germans' inevitable fate and the Allies' soon victory.